Hello all, it's Matt Goodman. I got a new camera recently and it does time lapses, so I thought I'd record some of my work down in the basement. Dad and I recently did some track planning for Circleville, which is along the top edge of the screen. I should say that's the north end of Circleville. And I wanted to continue that track planning around this curve on the south end of Circleville, which is on the left side of the screen. Before I could do that, I needed to get some foam in place to draw on, and before I could put that foam in place, I needed to put in the sub-road bed for the second of the double track main lines. My sub-road bed is homosode spline. Homosode spline is, each spline is about 8 feet long, and I cut mine 2 inches tall. And then 3 splines makes up one roadbed. So you can see at the top, part I'm assembling now, putting that third one in place for that first curve. And then what I'm spending some time doing here, doing some measurement, is to make sure the center to center between the two lines, two sub-road beds, is correct. The NMRA calls for a 2-inch center to center distance on a straightaway, and that has to go out to about 2.5 inches in the middle of my curves, which are about 30-inch radius. And that allows for some additional clearance for large locomotives and long cars and such. So the challenge was to go from 2-inch center to center to that larger 2.5-inch center to center, back to 2-inch, back to 2.5-inch, back to 2-inch as I go around counterclockwise. The way I did that was took a shim, which I'm filing on right now, and put it between the outside of the 3 splines for the first track and the inside spline of the second track. So that'll give me my additional 1/2 inch that I need for the clearance. So I'm clamping that in place now and making sure that that transition from the straightaway along the left through the easement and into the constant radius in the middle where the splice is, and shim is rather, and then back to the easement and onto the next straight off to the right. So you see me going back and forth here with a tape measure, just make sure that the transition from where the shim is to the easement, there's no place there where it goes too abruptly. The radius doesn't tighten up too abruptly. And once that looks like it's okay, then I shoot a couple screws in a few key places, hold it in place. When I assemble my spline, I use a combination of 1-inch screws, 1.5 inch, and 2-inch, and in some cases 3.5-inch screws. These are all number 6s or number 7s. I think the 3.5-inch ones are number 8s. The 1-inch screws are good for kind of tacking one spline in place temporarily. 2-inch are great for going through all 3 splines, which 1.5 inches, and into the existing roadbed if there is one. And then the 3.5-inch ones are great for anchoring the second main line to the existing first main line. So my process is to clamp in place, make sure the tops are level, it looks good, and shoot a screw in, move the clamps down, and so forth. And take a quick time out to meet with my wife, and then back to work. Be careful when pulling it back towards the straightaway on the right side rather, because I don't want to shoot a screw in there and pull that new roadbed too tight and watching out for kinks. And everything looks good. So once that's complete, then I can go ahead and get the foam over and get the cut in place. To do that, I want to be able to fit the backdrop. It's got a slight curve on the left. You can see where there's a notch in the wall, and there's a cove at the top of the screen. Do that, take a short shim and just kind of transfer the shape of the backdrop from the backdrop to the foam. Then cut it out with a utility knife. One more quick measurement, make sure everything's square, make sure it's marked properly. I learned this technique from my dad way back when he was setting up Talking Valley Scenic Railroad. We had a gondola for a riding car, and gondolas are notoriously bent out of shape, and wanted to put a piece of wood between the ribs on the inside of the gondola and the various dents and the floor so that people didn't drop stuff down between the sides of the gondola and the floor. So I call it the gondola technique. Here I'm just doing some final trimming to make sure it fits reasonably tight, reasonably accurately to the backdrop. I don't really want to touch the backdrop so the backdrop can move in and out if it needs to and doesn't squeak. I'm worried about squeaking. I'm sure it won't, but it might. Then I got to mark the front edge of the flat space using a marker on the bottom side, just going along the inside edge of the new roadbed. Cut that sucker out. Pop it off. Fit it. Looks good. Make one more cut to go around a splice I have for the roadbed. A few final adjustments. Looks pretty good. And we'll call that a night.